Hello again YouTube, Jake here, and welcome back to Reading Too Much Into Things. Today, just as last month, I'm going to go over an abridged history of a long-running Japanese franchise that started airing in the 70s, which in fact is also a creation of Shotaro Ishinomori, Super Sentai. But of course, before we can talk about this franchise, most Americans will recognize better as Power Rangers, we must talk about what came before, normal Sentai. And to talk about that, we need to talk about what came before even that. Let me explain. As we discussed last month, Ishinomori, the creator of Kamen Rider, was first a mangaka who created a number of well-known series. One of, if not his earliest solo creation, was Cyborgs 009 in 1963. Cyborg 009 was the story of 9 people kidnapped by an evil group known as Black Ghost, who remodeled them into cyborgs as their ultimate plan of starting the next world war by selling weapons of mass destruction to rich buyers. The cyborgs then team up together to defeat Black Ghost, and then later threats such as other mad scientists, supernatural beings, and ancient civilizations. The series is considered, and likely is, the first superpowered hero team made in Japan and, as you might have noticed, share more than a few similarities to the original Kamen Rider series. Well, on the heels of Kamen Rider's success in 1971, Toei requested another live-action series from Ishinomori, this time a team series similar to his Cyborg 009 series. And I'd imagine, preferably one with less Nazis. And so, in 1975, Himitsu Sentai Goranger, or Secret Task Force Goranger, was made. An evil organization known as Black Cross Army is so evil that leads the UN to do something even stand-up comedians said was impossible. Actually try and do something about them. In this case, by forming the Earth Guard League, also known as EAGLE, because it used EA from Earth. This group was so much of a threat to Black Cross that they sent out 5 operatives to destroy each Eagle branch in Japan because it's a Japanese show. Of course it's focused exclusively on Japan. However, 5 operatives as well as an underground base survived the surprise attack and are given electronic battlesuits and become Akaranger, Aoranger, Kiranger, Momoranger, and Midori Ranger, the Himitsu Sentai Goranger! The show, still holding the record for netting the highest ratings of any Sentai series, is not what you'd expect if you come in having only seen Power Rangers or even more modern Super Sentais. For one thing, it is not actually a Super Sentai, but I'll touch on that in a few. It also had the first Kiranger get promoted and leave the team, only for his replacement to be killed on screen in battle about 10 episodes later. And it's not exactly a pleasant death. Japan in the 70s. Still, it pulled in big views and was a major hit, so of course, Ishinomori was tapped again to make a follow-up series in a similar vein. The follow-up show was not as much of a hit. April 1977 saw the introduction of JAKQ, that's J-A-K-Q, Dengekai, Japanese for Blitzkrieg Squad. Its story, also about a mysterious evil group, this time solely known as Crime, is so giant and evil, the world creates a worldwide organization to battle them. And this group is called the International Science Investigation Squad, otherwise known as ISBOY. This shouldn't be so awkward since this group was made in '77, but it still makes me feel awkward saying it. And so, the leader of the Tokyo branch of this group, taking the codename Joker, gathers willing test subjects of various needs to undergo a cyborg enhancement project, transforming them into bio-enhanced combat squad, Spade Ace, Dijak, Hot the Queen, and Clover King, forming the group Jaka. Later, the commander Joker stepped down and was replaced by a master of disguise and cyborg himself, known as Big One. Jaka lasted barely to the end of the year. Its air was only 35 episodes long. There's no real solid explanation of just why it was so unpopular, be it a presumed change in tone, that team was not the right number, that Big One was too silly compared to the serious sense of the rest of the team. But with the poor reception to Jaka, Ishinomori stepped out from working on Sentai and stuck with working on Kamen Rider on and off again, and Sentai took a break for airing in 1978. That year instead was taken up by a rather odd bit of international geek history. In the late 70s, Toei had made a 3-year licensing agreement with Marvel of America, which would allow both sides to use each other's properties as they wished. Really not something you'd ever see in this day. Which led to the Marvel side to use 2 of Toei's Animation's giant robots in their comic book adaptation of Shogun Warrior toy line. And on the Toei side, it saw the creation of 1978's Spider-Man. Originally having planned for him to be a side character for another story involving a samurai being sent to the present, they decided instead to make an enjoyably strange show starring, in name and costume, Spider-Man. The story was about a young man seeing a UFO called the Marveler from Planet Spider, yes, really, crash. When investigating, he finds the last surviving warrior of Planet Spider, who had been battling an evil alien group, the Iron Cross Army, led by Professor Monster. In order to continue the battle and stop Professor Monster's attempt to rule the universe, the alien named Garia injects our hero with his Planet Spider blood, giving him spider-like powers, as well as a bracelet that activates his costume, web shooters, and allows him to control the Marveler, which, I am dead serious, can transform into a giant robot. Despite some complaints of how not Spider-Man-like this show was, interviews with Marvel staff suggest most of them, including Stan Lee, really enjoyed the show, amazed by the effects and especially the stunt work. Now, how does this relate to Super Sentai's long history or the 2 previous series? Well, now's a good time as ever to re-mention this. The previous 2 series, Go Ranger and Jaka, were not actually Super Sentais. While years later they were retroactively included, until 1995, they were considered just Sentais, with Super Sentais being a different franchise altogether. Why is that? Well, the 2 Sentais were missing one big thing, that the following series had more in common with Spider-Man. A giant robot. Yes, Go Rangers and Jaka had no giant robots for their show. The monster of the week would not grow giant, or get into a robot to battle the heroes. They would just fight and defeat them and move on. The giant robot's second battle concept was a creation of Spider-Man, with the Leopardon, which was specifically added to the series to draw a younger audience in. Because kids dig giant robots. This formula came more into play in the next series created by the agreement between Toei and Marvel, and officially the first Super Sentai. Originally planned as Japan's counterpart to Marvel Captain America, Battle Fever J. To do battle with an evil organization called Egos, 4 young agents and an FBI agent team up and don battlesuits to become Battle Japan, Battle France, Battle Cossack of the Soviet Union, Battle Kenya, and Miss America, the Battle Fever team. With their giant robot, the Battle Fever Robo, they fought against Ego's monsters and giant robot armies. Even with the death of the original Battle Cossack and the near-fatal wounding of Miss America, even their replacements continued to fight to see the destruction of Egos. This series was kind of goofy even for the 70s, which might have been one of the many saving graces that saw it restart interest in another long-running franchise. And so, every year from that point on, a new Super Sentai aired in Japan, each with one or more giant robots, separating it from Jaka and Go Rangers as Super Sentai, starting with the solely produced series Denshi Sentai Denjiman. Deciding to step away from evil organizations wanting to rule the world, instead, Denjiman has a chunk of a destroyed alien planet landing on Earth, and when detecting the group that destroyed their home planet to begin with, a computer from planet Denji on the land that fell to Earth selects 5 individuals to fight against the oncoming invasion as the team Denjiman. It was followed with the direct sequel, Taiyo Sentai Sun Vulcan, an interesting first from that being the original Red Ranger leaving, though not killed, and replaced by another, though people's reactions to the story was such that they decided against continuing other series stories directly ever again. Sun Vulcan was also the first Super Sentai to introduce multiple mechas that would combine into one giant Megazord to do battle, as opposed to simply one giant robot. Other firsts in this series were the team being animal-themed, specifically Eagle, Shark, Panther, as well as being the first Sentai to have a 3-man team, and the only team to have no female ranger whatsoever. It was followed by the unrelated Dai Sentai Gogul 5. 1983 saw the airing of Kagaku Sentai Dynaman, which brought with it many changes that Sentai fans may consider as much part of Sentai as giant robots. One of which, though not considered important, was trimming the show's length from the full 30 minutes to closer to 25 minutes from start to end, forcing the show to become more tightly focused and rely less on stock footage. Another story introduction that came from various rewrites of the show's story during production led to the first Dark Hero of Super Sentai, a mysterious third party that seems to get in the villain's way for his own reasons, but not actively being an ally of the heroes, even if they end up aiding them directly. But one of the most visually noted changes was the introduction of the hero suits now being spandex. Yeah, that's the thing most people focus on. Old costumes didn't used to be spandex, but with Dynaman they started being spandex. Following Dynaman was 1984's Chodenshi Bioman, which tried to change up the formula a bit by being the first Sentai to have 2 female team members instead of 1. It was also the first Super Sentai that Hayam Saban attempted to use stock footage of in his first attempt of making what would later be known as Power Rangers. It was followed with Dengeki Sentai Changeman in 85, Choshise Flashman in 86, which introduced the first secondary Megazord, Hikari Sentai Maskman in 87, which introduced the idea of each ranger having their own Zord, as well, though for only 1 episode, introducing a 6th ranger, and Choju Sentai Liveman in 88, which had the first animal-themed Zords, as well as a Super Gatai of the 2 Megazords combining, and the last series to have a flying fortress that delivered the Zords in every battle. The first Super Sentai of the Heisei era, though, because they are not as directly tied to one creator, as well as never really not being on TV, they aren't divided between Showa and Heisei era as much as Kamen Rider was Kosoku Sentai Turbo Rangers, which was also the first car-themed Super Sentai as well as the first high school-age Sentai team. Following Turbo Rangers was 1990's Chikyu Sentai 5-Man, the first Sentai whose team members were all of single family, and 1991's Chojin Sentai Jetman, taking direct inspiration from Kakaku Ninjatai Gatchaman, known in America as Battle of the Planets or G-Force. Jetman also wanted to make it more like a TV drama as opposed to a child's show, which at the time was highly trendy, with a lot of focus on drama, love triangle romances, and tragedies, which the viewers really liked and got pulled in by. 1992 saw the release of the first dinosaur-themed Super Sentai, Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger. It was the first Sentai to have a regular appearing 6 Ranger, first Sentai to have a 7 Zord Gatai, the first for their Zords to be near purely based on animal as opposed to fusions of animals and machines, and yes, was the series they could finally use as adaptation fuel for his long-running Power Ranger franchise. It was followed by 1993's Gosei Sentai Dai Rangers, which did not have many firsts. Yeah, it had the first suitless roll call, which is one of the more badass things you see in Sentais, as well as the first child growing into adult ranger, but outside of that, there's not much to note. 1994's Ninja Sentai Kaku Rangers, the first ninja-themed Sentai, was picked to balance out the Chinese martial arts and mythology theming of Dai Rangers. Like many before, tried to change up the approach to Sentai. Namely, along with the Adam West Batman-style visual sound effects during fights, also attempted to stagger the introduction of the cast, instead of having the whole team together in the first episode. We now come to a reoccurring trope, not in Super Sentai itself, but I feel in the Sentai fanbase. 1995 saw the release of Chodiki Sentai O Rangers. Being the 19th installment, was the series to include Go Rangers and Jaka officially as Super Sentais, so as to be the 20th anniversary series. And they thought, to tie it into the 20th anniversary, to have the team have similar dynamics to the original Go Ranger team. However, with incidents such as a sarin gas attack on Tokyo's subways and a devastating earthquake occurring during the show's production, it's had to have constant rewrites, making the show's cast shifting from serious episodes to goofier personalities, and landing at some of the worst rating in Sentai history, leading to the rumors of Super Sentai being cancelled. And as an adult fan of Super Sentai, I swear people haven't stopped panicking about Sentai being cancelled since then. However, what really saved Super Sentai from being cancelled and pulled from TV was a flood of gimmicks and new toy tie-ins, which netted the show huge money and thus caused a change in the approach of writing the shows to be more gimmicky and be able to sell more toys. It also began an arguably better trend, namely that of yearly crossover versus specials, which in the current team would meet, sometimes fight against, but mostly fight alongside, last year's Sentai, with Choyu Sentai Orenja, Ole vs. Kaku Ranger. Though, unlike the following series, its crossover was treated solely as an extra side episode, whereas the series to come after treated it as a big important event. Following O Rangers in 1996, we got the second car-themed team, Gekiso Sentai Car Ranger, which took a different route after the generally shaky response to O-Rangers, and went with a near-pure comedy, making itself a parody of its own genre and poking fun at itself, even in the crossover movie Power Rangers vs. O-Rangers. My best guess would be, after trying so hard to be so many different things, the idea of poking fun at their own tropes might have been thought up as a way to better approach them in the future, or maybe wanting to give a statement to the viewers that they're aware of the problems of last season. There's no given reason for it having been a parody that I can find at least, but I'm sure there is one. After Power Rangers came 97's Denji Sentai Mega Rangers and 98's Seiju Sentai Gingaman, which, while not having any notable firsts or important factoids, do share something with Power Rangers I wish to bring up. All three shows, in a row, featured a former porn star in the role of the human-looking female enemy commander. What is important about this? By itself, not really. Not really anything. But it is something that in Japan is so ingrained in the minds now that even in parody series they make reference to that. Despite it happening, I believe, all of 4 times in Sentai's history. Weird. Moving right along, we have the last Sentai of the 90s. 1999's QQ Sentai Go-Go 5. Notable for being currently the last Sentai to not have an additional Ranger or hero in their series cast, having instead a movie-only additional hero. Hence why, to keep up the tradition, Power Rangers created the Titanium Ranger in its adaptation, Lightspeed Rescue. It was also another, I believe the second, of the whole family Sentai teams. Next up, we enter the new millennium with 2000's Mirai Sentai Time Rangers, which, oddly enough, is the only Sentai to date that solely captures the monsters of the week as opposed to destroying or killing them. Think about that for a second. Following that, we have 2001's Hyakuju Sentai which, as the 25th series, started the trend that focused on number of series as opposed to how many years since it began, but also was the first Sentai to have the heroes of the season team up with members from more than just last year's team. I'd get more into that special, but I have plans in the future. It was also the first Sentai to introduce the beloved cell phone morpher trend. Next up, we have the second ninja-themed series, Ninpu Sentai Hurricanea in 2002. The second dinosaur-themed Sentai with 03's Byakuyu Sentai Aba Rangers, which had a poorly dubbed episode of itself shown on a TV in the Power Rangers adaptation Dino Thunder. And 04's Tokusou Sentai Deka Rangers, which was cop-themed, but I don't know how to compare that to other Sentai since several of them can be seen as a kind of law enforcement group. Along with various firsts involving the size of the team as well as the ratio of male Rangers to female Rangers, Deka Rangers is also the first Sentai so far to win the Seiyun Award, an award given out each year to the best science fiction work of either movies or television. Not really an important fact of history, just I really like Deka Rangers, so it winning such an important award, an award that only 2 other Toku series have won so far, gives me a happy. 2005 saw the release of Maho Sentai Maji Rangers, the third all-family Sentai, and 2006 brought us the 30th series, Gogo Sentai Boukengers, and did very little of Sentai importance, so roll right along with 2007's Juken Sentai Geki Rangers, 2008's Engine Sentai Go Rangers, another car-themed series, and where the fourth porn star is a female enemy commander is from. 09 Samurai Sentai Shinkengers, the first samurai-themed Sentai, as well as the first to have a female Red Ranger, albeit for only a few episodes, as well as the first Super Sentai to cross over with Kamen Rider, specifically Decade, the massive toku equivalent to Crisis on Infinite Earths. Yes, Decade even dragged in its sibling series even though they barely even talked to each other really till 2002. Anywho, we're at the home stretch, so if you want to get up and stretch your legs a bit from this checklist of 40 Super Sentai series, don't worry, I can wait.
Three weeks later.
Let's continue, shall we, here with 2010's team, Tensou Sentai Go-Sagers, the first of all teams to use cards to transforms. Tie it in with the card-based arcade game in Japan that allowed you to make your own mix-and-match team of Rangers. We hit another anniversary series with the 35th Sentai, 2011's Kaizo Sentai Go-Kaijers, the story of pirates traveling through space collecting Ranger keys after a great war against an invading force led to all the previous Rangers losing their powers. With the pirates having collected the keys, they are now on their way to Earth in order to awake the keys' true power and unlock the universe's greatest treasure. And if any of you follow Linkara of Atop the Fourth Wall, you are already aware of this from his review of Go-Kaiger's first 5 episodes. Despite Go-Kaiger's having been the 30th series, Toei put a lot of effort into this, the 35th Sentai, by having past actors come back as their previous roles, going as far back as getting the original Aka Ranger actor to appear for a cameo. It was also, from the standpoint of a writer and nerd, important for bringing the Versus movies into the same continuity as the series, in much the same way the events of Decade created a shared Earth for all Kamen Rider histories. In Go-Kaiger's case, though, they just had references to villains from the crossover movies appear in the show for tribute episodes. Which, okay, in the grand scheme of things, does not actually mean all that much, but it's a fun nerd factoid. And what are we here for if not fun factoids? Oh, right, an abridged history of the franchise, which I've boiled down to this year, aired then, and started that trend. Moving on. 2012 saw 2 points of note. Firstly, 2012's official Sentai, Tokume Sentai Go Busters. And secondly, the unofficial note. Hikonin Sentai, literally translating into unofficial Sentai, Akiba Rangers, is a strange, fun little note in the world of Sentai, as it's a parody series wherein the plot and overall goal of the team is to write the history of Super Sentai to get themselves recognized as the official 37th Sentai team, as well as intentionally aiming for a teenager and otaku fan base, as opposed to young children in the family who wake up early with them. As of this video, however, despite getting a second season, and possibly a third, their battle continues. Keep fighting, Akiba Ranger! 2013 brought us the third dinosaur-themed series, Zuden Sentai Kyoryuja, followed by 2014's Desha Sentai Tokyugers and 2015's Shuriken Sentai Ninjingers. The last two of which decided to have a full hour-long episode tie-in with the then airing Kamen Rider series, and personally, while I liked the one between Tokyugers and Gaim, I really hope this trend dies a quick, painful death. Which finally brings us to 2016 Sentai and the 40th series, Doubutsu Sentai Zyuohgers, which is the first Sentai where the majority of the team are animal hybrids. Most of the time, you get maybe one or two of those, and mostly as commander types. And with that, we come to the end. Thank you for watching, and I hope it was informative. I think it's informed me enough that next time I do an abridged history of a show or franchise, I'll aim for something with less than 20 years of history and content. That's a lie. Again, thank you for watching. Come back next week for more Reading Too Much Into Things, and as always, stay safe.